What is the depth of life? What is the depth of consciousness? What is the red thread connecting us to this life? What is the meaning that makes life truly worth living? Then no one teaches us. Today we'll discuss a topic related to the meaning of life. What are life's values? And why must we live for them? The orientation, this red thread, throughout our lives, that people often call a life philosophy, does it exist or not? The reason for us to live, the philosophy for us to live, does it exist or not? This is a foundation to orient our lives. You know, Vietnamese education lacks consistent orientation. That orientation comes from that red thread throughout one's life. In the words of those who often do research, they call it a life philosophy. In everyday language, it's choosing a reason to live. In the language of corporate culture, people call it core values. What is it? They're all quite similar. So when we find a common voice, a red thread, then, in your opinion, when do people come together to start a family and have children, and we share one red thread throughout our lives, will this family be prone to conflict or happiness? Note that all other things are just methods. For example, what profession you choose is just a way to earn money. This person does this job, that person does that job. They're just methods for us to build a home. But what is the foundation on which this home is built, for it to have depth? We're hardly taught this. We're not trained because essentially the foundation on which we're learning of this entire nation already lacks it. It has already faded. So you'll notice that in Vietnamese education, it keeps struggling with finding core values, struggling with finding an educational philosophy, struggling. So to reach this part, it took me approximately a little over 25 years from the moment I stepped out of university. In fact, I've been searching for this issue since 10th grade. Since 10th grade, I've already been curious about these things. I had already read a lot about this. Books about human beings, books on psychology, books on philosophy, and books on morality I had already read in 10th grade, but I didn't understand. I was just confused about it. So later on, when I started working, I sought it out more. And afterwards, around the age of 40, I perceived it clearly. I had realized it before, but it was still blurry. Around 40, it became clear. And after 40, I systematized it into a system of lectures, and the first beneficiaries were the teachers of Tuesday Duck School, and before the Tuesday Duck teachers, it was the Parenting Club. We had a club called the Parenting Club. It was the group that was trained first for about 3 years, meeting once a month. And there was a training session for parents. Then from the Parenting Club, we moved on to the Tuesday Duck School system. So the entire lecture system was rearranged by me once again and trained into a lecture system for Tuesday Duck School. Tuesday Duck School teachers, then Tuesday Duck parents also joined the study. The parents joined the study, then the teachers brought their family members. And the parents also brought their acquaintances. So a course I used to teach took 4 to 5 months to complete, with only one session per week. There were assignments every week. So about 20 sessions like that. You divide it. 1 week like that is only for sessions. 20 sessions, isn't that 5 months? After those 5 months, I discovered that initially 100 people started. At the end, there were about 90 people left. After 5 months, the ratio of outsiders was higher than insiders. Initially, we trained internally. The internal ratio was, for example, 70%. But after 5 months, the insiders were only 50, even only 40, but the outsiders kept increasing. So from there I discovered one thing. My insiders work in education. but they may not necessarily love philosophy because they happen to get into pedagogy. Then they applied to Tuesday Duk, and for some reason they passed the interview, that's all. And they go to study with the mindset of being forced to study. Because they are Tuesday Duk teachers, so they are forced to study, not that they get to study. While outsiders are the ones who get to study. Outsiders are invited, they volunteer to come. And they even pay to come. Even though the amount is not much, just a few 100,000 is not worth mentioning. They still come like that, so they get to study. So they go to study with a proactive mindset, while the others go to study with a passive mindset. Those two levels are completely different. And so when I look back at the school system, I see that those who don't have an education degree, don't have a pedagogical degree, but enter the education field, then usually those people are better than those with pedagogical degrees, because they dare to sacrifice their profession. They already had a very stable job. Outside they worked for 10, 15 years, but they gave up that job to switch to education. Then their determination is usually huge, and their passion is enormous. So after just a few years they catch up, and after about 5 years, they surpass those who have worked for many years. Surpass them completely. And we look at scientists. We also see this phenomenon. Like Louis Pasteur was a chemist, not a medical person, but he was honored in the medical field. Vaccines belong to medicine, not chemistry. Then there's Maria Montessori. She was a doctor, but she was honored in the field of education. And countless others are the same. In Vietnam we have a very famous general, who was recognized by the world. That is Vo Nguyen Giap. Vo Nguyen Giap never studied in any military school. Vo Nguyen Giap was just a history teacher, but was honored in the military field, simply because he was passionate about historical research, the battles in history, researching thousands of years of ancient battles. So he was good. The passion, the determination, it's stronger than being trained for 4 years at a university. Any 4-year major is nothing. In life, 4 years is what, compared to 80 years, is just 5%. It's nothing in that 5%. Exactly how many percent is your major? You study all sorts of subjects, but in the end you only teach one subject, so it might be less than 1%, not even 5%. So in fact you are trained properly for only 1% of your life, but it's called a major. Others, the passionate ones, they spend 90% of their lives investing in their field. So even without degrees, they are still much better than us. So when I understood this, I looked at successful people, and I discovered that all the professions that are related to them, they jump from profession A to B, they succeed very quickly, because they carry the same formula. They bring it to the new field, with all that passion, all that determination. Then after a few years, they become number one again. On average, it only takes 2 to 3 years for them to become experts in the new field. 2 to 3 years of voluntary in-depth learning to the core. Compared to 4 years of university, which one is better? 2 to 3 years of in-depth learning to the core. The level is at least 3 to 5 times higher. In the world they have statistics. Universities in the world now, the statistics are students who come to lecture halls to study, and students who study online at home. After 4 years, both graduated from the university. We don't count the failing ones, only the passing ones. So the group that studies online and still passes university, after 10 years, on average, they are 3 times more successful than the offline studying group. Because the online group studies voluntarily. No one reminds them. There's no teacher beside them. They have to turn on the internet themselves to study and do exercises. When they get stuck, they have to go online themselves to find solutions, fumbling with it. What about the mentality of those who come to lecture halls? If stuck, the teacher will teach later, right? If stuck, just ask a friend and it's done, because seeing a friend has done it. Unintentionally, we don't train ourselves. So we shouldn't be afraid of working in a different field. Don't be afraid of the issue. There's a profession that schools don't teach, which is we are born. Grow up, then what's the meaning of life? Schools never teach this. That's the reason why young people now are lost and disoriented. You go to work, you find sometimes you feel unsettled, feeling lost. Inside you feel unsettled. You go to work, you get paid, but inside you still feel unsettled and lost. Then sometimes you feel bored, right? A lot. That's because we haven't learned the depth. What is the depth of life? What is the depth of consciousness? What is the red thread connecting us to this life? What is the meaning that makes life truly worth living? Then no one teaches us. In the past, I studied at the Polytechnic for 5 years, but there was not a single teacher who said a sentence to me about the meaning of life. No teacher could say a sentence about character, morality. In the geometry class, have you finished your drawing? Probability and statistics, have you done the calculations? In mechanical engineering, where are the drawings? Everything is just aimed at getting a job. Never mention how we should live to make life worth living. Asking for 5 years like that, for thousands, tens of thousands of students, ask how many of them form character. Cannot form. So this is the subject that Vietnam lacks. One of the subjects to form character is civic education. This subject originally was called morality. Then we lost the name. Such a good name changed to civic education. And in civic education, what does it teach? It teaches to walk on the right or left side outside. It teaches to obey the law, right? But that's not morality yet. You go outside. You walk on the right side. Are you a moral person? You obey the law. Are you a moral person? Not necessarily. You're afraid of being fined, so you walk on the right side. Doesn't necessarily mean morality. So civic education cannot satisfy. Civic education is a subject. It teaches morality from the outside in. From the outside in means what? It imposes some rules we have to follow. Then you just follow the rules. But inside we may not agree, and it's still okay. So one fine day you cross an empty road. There's no green light. Red light, someone broke their leg, you ignore them. You ignore them. Because according to civic education, helping or not helping is the same. This is the police's job. And from there indifference appears. So many people misunderstand like this. Even teachers who teach civic education, they think civic education is enough. It's never enough. Morality is the opposite. Morality comes from the inside out. Inside you must have good thoughts. You must have a kind heart. A sincere heart. You go outside, it becomes the way we act. Then it's called a moral person. But it's rarely taught. Teaching from the outside in is dangerous. So this morning we will share. All day today, we will share both the way from the outside in and the way from the inside out. But from the outside in, how to awaken the inside. Fastest and most effectively. That's also one of the ways. From there we realize what is the core character. And we realize the meaning of life.